Well, greetings, Gateway family, from Perth, Western Australia. I just wanted to take this opportunity right now just to say thank you for this opportunity just to share about Battelle and us and what we did in Battelle. And I want to just explain what Battelle is, how Battelle works, and our role in Battelle in Spain, in Madrid. Firstly, I just want to sort of share that with this lockdown and churches closed, I just find it so fascinating how it could look like an opportunity for the devil to be at work, and he's always at work, as God is always at work too, and stopping people from gathering together. But I'm reminded of Jesus' words to Peter when he said, I will build my church and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. And it's been proven true, that has been proven true throughout the centuries, ever since he said it. And this situation's no different. So we can still connect via video like this. It's not ideal, but it's something, and we are still connecting. So I want to explain, well, firstly, now I'm sorry I haven't got the Rachel and the kids, but for those of you who don't know us, my name's Aaron Mullen, and my wife is Rachel. We have 5 kids: Amira, Jonathan, Isabella, Levi, and Joel. And we lived in Spain, in Madrid, for 4 years as WEC missionaries for a drug and alcohol church planting work called Battelle International. Battelle are a ministry of WEC. It was started by WECers in the 80s, in the early 80s, and it's under the WEC umbrella, if you like. So what is Battelle? Well, Battelle, it's a lot to explain, but I'll try and keep it brief. Battelle are a drug and alcohol church planting service. Well, you could kind of split it up in a way. So Battelle is a social work in that we are aiming to rehabilitate men and women who are caught up in addictions. And it started in Spain, but now it's all over the world. Excuse me, including here in Australia, Melbourne. But we're in England, Italy, France, Germany, Czech Republic, Finland, Russia, India. It's enormous in India, Mongolia, Bhutan. We are looking to go back into the United States. We were in New York. We had to close that down. It was not running well. It was not so successful. We are looking to go back there again in a different area, though, of the States. So that's good. Battelle are always looking to expand and to reach people. That's Battelle's vision, is to not only rehabilitate people from addiction, but to introduce them to Jesus, to give them an environment, an opportunity to completely change, to completely surrender. So we give them the gospel. They are not your average, everyday sort of person. They have serious problems. A person doesn't go into drugs because they wake up one day wanting to try out marijuana or try out cocaine or heroin or just, I'm going to start drinking today. That they start because they have problems, character problems. They couldn't cope with life, so they had to turn to alcohol or drugs. Of course, there's quite often there's family issues that started in the home, or a bad upbringing, or so forth. So working with the men is a challenge. In some ways, it's a bit like working with toddlers, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way or a demeaning way, but we have grown men who just spit the dummy. They have no perseverance. They really lack character, which again, like I said, is why they're in the situation they're in. So I didn't really explain what Battelle is. So yes, we're a social work with wanting to provide communities that create that atmosphere for them to change. We introduce them to the gospel. So a new addict can come into a Battelle community. And just for an example, in Madrid we have about 20 communities. So that's houses of about 16, 17, sometimes 20 men. Now a new addict can come in and they need to follow the rules. They have to do what we do in Battelle. That is, we work, we get up in the morning at a certain time, we have breakfast, we do the dishes, we then go get ready, and we go off into the trucks and into the vans off to the work. So that is rastros. We have second-hand furniture shops which receive donations, and sometimes these are fixed up, these donations, such as furniture and so forth, and they're sold. Now, the men who come in, they have to abide by these rules, and it's a cold turkey program. There's no methadone or weaning kind of program. It's cold turkey. And they have to live in community, and they have to get on. They have to learn all these life skills that perhaps they've never learnt before, or they learnt really badly. And it's almost as if they have to relearn how to cope with life. And we hope that by introducing them to Jesus, the gospel, they relearn how to cope with life through Jesus and with the power of Jesus. And almost you have to rewire the way they think, the way they do life. Addiction is more than just consuming a drug which chemically changes the brain and makes it do certain things. Addiction really is a character problem. People come in because, like I've said a few times, they can't cope with life. They use drugs in a way to medicate the pain or whatever it may be. So they need to learn how to cope with life, how to persevere without using drugs. So our hope is Jesus. That's what we give them. So every day, and a day would be, they wake up, they have breakfast, we pack up, do the dishes, then a devotional. They get devotionals. Most houses do it every day, and I would share in some of those devotionals. I didn't share a lot. I maybe did about 15, and that would be just like a 20-minute sort of quick devotional. So the leader or whoever was speaking would just pick something from the gospel, from the Bible, and well, I tried to focus on and sort of teach a bit, because the guys lacked a lot of background knowledge about the Bible and about God and Jesus and sin and what is sin and why we sin, and if we want to see victory in our lives, we've got to face that sin and cut it out, things like that. So now my role also was, my main role was, I was a mechanic there, fixing and maintaining the vehicles. So with all that work that they do, they have vans and trucks, little small trucks, Renaults, and the pastors had cars as well. So I was based in a workshop which we had in Zulema, which is a little place just outside of one of the cities in the north called Alcalá de Henares. So Zulema was there, and it had a house, a men's house. So there was a men's house and a workshop. And I was there nearly every day for most of the time, the 4 years, apart from language learning and things like that. So we changed oil, we did filters, we changed brakes and clutches and engines. I even rebuilt a couple of engines. We had a small team, me, a Ukrainian, and another Spanish guy, and the boss, of course, who was also Spanish. And yeah, we did lots of work. Sometimes we didn't have much, and it was in those times when there wasn't anything to do, I'd chat with the guys and do things. I'd try and encourage them, have conversations with them. So yes, I just wanted to continue from what I was saying before about men. And so what we saw, different ways in which the men reacted or rehabilitated, if you like. Some didn't. So some would come, they would obviously come off the drugs because they're in a cold turkey environment, but they wouldn't embrace community life, and they would hate it. They wouldn't get on with people. They had fights and dummy spits and storm out and go, and they would leave, and then things would go bad, and again they'd get on the drugs, they'd get on the streets, have no money, and have no choice but to return. Some men did that. Others embraced God and expressed it, and quickly. Some really took it on quickly. Loved God, became responsible. They became their character changed. Hardworking. They loved God, and they were what it would seem would be changing, and some were making some serious changes, and they would confess their love for God, and they were getting baptized, and great things did happen, and I saw that. Unfortunately, I saw a lot that didn't as well, like I've just explained. And I think with some people it takes longer. They will make decisions longer, or they'll come to conclusions longer about their own state, that they are in this situation because of their own actions, and they need to know why. Some perhaps know that, but just don't want the God thing. I saw that. One example of a young man that came. He did live in Spain, but he's actually from Peru. He hadn't been long in Spain at that time, maybe just a few years. And he was only about 24, and he had lost his job, and all this because of the drugs, and really got himself on drugs and burnt the bridges with his family and so forth. And but he was. There was one of those situations where there wasn't much happening in the workshop, and I just went wandering through the house and just chatting to the guys, and he was one of them I chatted with for quite some time, about half an hour at least. And he was basically complaining to me about the lifestyle. So much control, I can't do this, I can't do that, and I'm bossed around a lot, and complaining about community life. And so that gave me an opportunity to really just speak and just be really direct and say, well, you are, even if you're out of here, if you're in the real world, you're always going to be, there's someone always going to be on top of you. You're going to have a boss who you need to submit to. If you are in a rental situation, you will you'll have to submit to the owner and to the manager, and there's the government. You have to submit always. Life is about submission. And also I explained to him about, tried to make him think, well, I asked him questions like, well, if you leave here, what's going to happen? Where are you going to go? Are you going to hit the drugs again? Trying to get him to think, and really just, instead of complaining, but thinking about his situation and why he's there, and just those real kind of basic things that most people know. But it's not I'm not trying to put people down. I don't want to portray that these people were dumb, but they do have underdeveloped characters, things that you should know by the time you're 24, and you should be able to tolerate certain things. And community living is difficult. I've done plenty of it, and but that is part of life sometimes. And if it's the step you need to take to get to rehabilitate yourself in order to get yourself in a position where you can live in the world, living and working and or studying, or in his situation, he's young enough to be able to study and get a career. You've got to be able to get through this first step of community living and rehabilitating. So that's just one example. I had conversations with many guys. I remember a guy, his name was Pedro, and every time I would share something in devotionals, he would come up to me and talk to me about God and about this. He had specific questions. He one time asked me about suffering and why is suffering, and that's actually a very common question outside of a Bethel community, outside of a rehab community. It's a very relevant question that so many people have these days, educated, not educated, so forth. And he told me prior to Bethel he'd never read a single page of the Bible, so he was really green. And so it was because of him and many others that I realised that when I shared, I need to be really basic about what is sin and its origins, and how to be free from that sin, the gospel message. So because so many men don't know the gospel, they've never read the Bible. He was one example of that. Though Spain typically has a Catholic background, they're very secular now, so there are some challenges there. Yes, we got to know a guy called David, who really, he didn't come with a drug problem. He came because he got involved with a girl. She got pregnant, had a child. He got kicked out, but he really loved his son and he wanted to be a father. He desperately wanted to be a father, and he's always trying hard to be a father. And I thought that was great. And Rachel and I really tried to influence him in the right way and answer his questions that he had regarding his son. And one time he came, he had lived in the community for about a year, then he left. He got a job and some living arrangements, and he was fine. But he had custody of his son for, well, I don't know what's the term, but he was able to have his son for a day. And he came to the community where we lived. And so we took him and his son and our kids and all of us, we all went out to the park and we played, and all the kids played, and our kids were so influential and good with him, his son. And it was just an opportunity to really just share with him about parenting, to help him in some ways. He loved God and he confessed his love for God and his surrender for him, and he found God in Battelle, which was fantastic. And he really loved us for that influence that we could have regarding kids and parenting. He was one man that made a bad decision, got a girl pregnant, but instead of running off, he wanted to be a part, not just a part, he wanted to really be a father, and I think that was great. So I also just wanted to share a little bit about culture, language. So I personally, when I arrived in Spain, I virtually knew nothing of Spanish. So I was fairly green. Rachel knew a little bit. She was okay, but I was well behind. And so I did 7 months of full-time language learning classes, and that was fantastic. That got me from virtually nothing to at least understanding and speaking a bit, but and writing and reading. So, but by the end of the 4 years, I was conversing okay. I would share the devotionals. I would share that in Spanish, and I could read and write fairly okay. But my kids, the kids were fantastic. They could read, write, and understand and speak beautifully. No accent, just sounded so amazing, and that was great to see. That was a really good experience to see that. It was a little harder for Rachel because she didn't get out as much. I was at the workshop most of the time. I shared with the men. I also picked up the kids from school, so I had much more influence, much more exposure to the language than Rachel. So she found it a bit isolating. For her experience, that is. So her language wasn't as good as it could have been. But I think it's often an experience for missionary wives that, especially with kids, that they don't often get, they feel a little isolated, and that was Rachel's experience too. And it was a pleasure to watch the kids grow in that, speak Spanish, and they learn so quickly. The culture is so different from Australia in so many ways. The government, just everything, government offices and how things run, the roads, and how people think. And when you're learning language, you've got to really learn how they think. And so that would influence what sort of words you would pick. It was good. It was an interesting experience. And it was a calling by God, and I thank you all for your support. Gateway Baptist family, you were just fantastic in supporting us, in encouraging us, in your, of course, in your financial giving. Really, us partnering together, you as a church and us as missionaries, we were able to fulfill the gospel, fulfill the mandate that Jesus gave us, and preach the gospel. And so thank you for partnering with us in doing that. And well, that's all I want to share. Thank you for listening. I hope this has been insightful. Please do pray, continue to pray for Battelle. Battelle, since this pandemic, have really financially struggled. We had to completely close in Spain, and all our income generating projects had to stop, which is how we feed the men. So they are really struggling financially. So please do pray for them and the leadership, of course, in decision making with that. So thank you, and I hope this has been insightful and interesting. See ya.